By classical Greece, they already had a tetrachordal system with the tetrachord being a sequence of 4 notes arranged in an interval of 4/3 plus 2 other notes. There were 3 genera described here. Here's what they sound like: diatonic, chromatic, and harmonic. And basically, 2 of these tetrachords plus an interval of 9/8 from an octave, and then they were arranged in this way. And then you could basically put any of the possible genera of tetrachord over here. You could start from any note you liked, as long as you could sing it, and you had a very large set of melodic possibilities. But harmony was kind of problematic because it was quite limited. So by the Middle Ages, it fell out of favor, and people started using Pythagorean system again. However, by the Renaissance, they tried to reintroduce the Greek concepts, the higher numbers, and they wanted their thirds to sound a bit more pure. So it was discovered that if you have a normal Pythagorean scale and flatten your fifth a little bit, you have very nice sounding thirds, like that 5/4 interval. And eventually it was just mathematically formalized, and this is the most common scale used in that time. This is actually the period correct scale for Renaissance and Baroque music, including Vivaldi, for example. If you want to play Vivaldi like Vivaldi did it, you use the scale. And however, this has a problem once you wrap beyond these steps of this generator that you made. Past the octave, you have a special interval that's not equal to the others and sounds very bad. They were called the wolf intervals because they sounded like a howling wolf. Basically, to remedy that, eventually the modern, equal system was developed and replaced quarter tone mean tone, although actually up until the 19th century or so, middle 19th century, quarter tone mean tone, or these well-tempered scales where you tune parts of your flat parts of your were actually possible alternative tunings. And now we have all the time for history, and I'll try to introduce some modern concepts. So I really like this definition, but unfortunately I don't think it's obvious to everyone, so I'll try to explain later, to explain it a little further. With regular temperament, which by the way is the most common scale for modern digital microtonal music, you take an interval or a few intervals, and then you just keep stacking them like the Pythagorean system infinitely. And you have a scale where you can do a lot of different modulation and polyphonic chords and all of that. You select the values of those intervals based on what just your intervals you want to approximate, and which of them you want to make equivalent. For example, mean tone means that 81/80 is tempered out. This means that the Pythagorean third, 81/64, is now equivalent to 5/4. It may be like 5/4 as in the quarter tone, it may be somewhere in between as in equal, but you can treat it as such. However, there's a lot of other possibilities that can happen. You can, for example, this porcupine, it's unfortunately not very visible on screen, divides a 4/3 into 3 equal parts. And there's also super 5, cylindric, this is one of my favorites. This 3/2 into 3 intervals equal to 8/7. But there is a lot of those. It's out of the scope of this presentation. Just intonation also had some progress. You're still stuck with having one note per pitch. You can't have multiple melodies in one pitch unless you add the notes. But you can have harmony. For example, if you make just a sequence of numbers and reduce them by 2 as necessary to form a scale, you have a harmonic and subharmonic series. And this scale, you can have multiple notes playing together very nicely and beautifully, and to some people in an alien way. The problem is that these scales tend to be quite peculiar, with like the interval decreasing the closer you get to here. So another option is to have a set of numbers and like take 2 or 3 of them, multiply them, and just take all the possible products of them. This is one of the examples. This is one of the simplest ones. This is a bit more evenly distributed and allows you to go all around the scale as you wish. It allows you for triadic, tetradic chords as you like. And finally, this is just a practical scale by a 20th century composer, Harry Barch, who used this on acoustic instruments, of all things, that he built himself. So he just takes a lattice of harmonic and subharmonic series, he added some products, he had a huge scale, 43 notes, kind of cumbersome. He dealt with it, sometimes in subsets, and this scale is fairly universal, you can play a lot of things on it. Finally, the note that you may have heard, if you do yoga, you may have heard Strudel system, Indian one. It is non-Western, it has intervals that are non-Western. If you eat shawarma, you may have heard makam, because some Turkish and Middle Eastern ensembles actually use makam music. So migrants like that. If you were like at a Pan-Asian restaurant, you may have heard Thai music. Gamelans actually aren't very common here, but I want to mention them because this is what we like. This is what you would want to hear if you would like to know what an alien orchestra could sound like, because it's a lot of people, it's tens of instruments, skillfully crafted, precisely tuned, completely different philosophy and practice from Western orchestras. Well, and finally, as an outro, some resources. Basically, go here if you would like to know about the scales more and you aren't afraid of mathematics. You can actually start with Wikipedia as well. These are like music specific. These 2 tools are, if you actually just want to hear what they sound like. This one, Scale Workshop, is very easy to set up, but if you don't have a MIDI keyboard, it's kind of cumbersome to play. This Terpstra is harder to set up, but like that's what I used. You have a touch screen. You can play it. Then like just some personal preferences. Sevish, very well known microtonalist, Benny Mike, so it's like less known. This guy is even less known, but like his album called The Elements is kind of my favorite. And Harry Barch, also like very peculiar guy who developed a just intonation system with acoustic instruments. That's quite impressive. And finally, like bonus content, just a mathematical anecdote, which is weird, a bit of a mystery why this is so popular non-mean tone EDOs. That's, as I said, regular temperaments that modern microtonalists use, and these are not mean tones, so they would not sound like tone equal. And finally, if you want something very alien, these 2 scales don't use octave as their like generator. So, and I know a lot of bands that play Bowl and Pierce, which use a ratio of 3 instead of 2. Okay, and now that I've probably actually squeezed that presentation into 15 minutes, you can ask questions at the end. I've tried to be as fast as possible, sorry.
Guys, you're welcome. Some question, you're welcome.
I mostly compose digitally. I do have an owl, but I don't like it. And on our daily stand-ups at work, I do performance on this thing. Maybe we'll just this was like a very good improvisation. I actually have like things that I've prepared, but a lot of them are kind of modern.
Songs.
Yeah.
Like, have you ever thought about creating soundtracks for some movies?
Not movies, but like when I compose, it's purely hypothetical. I do it as a soundtrack for possible game settings and games.
Okay. Well,
Gondian, I have a question. What's your native language?
Russian,
Real?
yeah. But like I'm effectively bilingual for at least 15 years, so I think 50% in English, but native is Russian.
so who is with?
Is your job somehow connected with this?
Not really, I'm a programmer, but not like a game programmer. So. Well, the way I compose it is a kind of programming because I like trackers. That's my approach.
So that's very close.
My major is theoretical physics.
Oh, okay.
I thought you sound like Sheldon. I was just watching Sheldon. Yeah. It's my impression.
Is it a compliment?
Do you want to be
like-
Game Theory?
Well, yeah, I've been compared to Sheldon a lot of times. That's the reason I tried watching it. But it's like there are definitely differences in like between me and Sheldon in terms of like behaviors. I definitely have social quirks, but of a different kind.
And another question. Does the traditional layout of a piano seem boring?
You see, I haven't, like, I mentioned in the title that I don't have a musical education, so it's like, it's just generic, like, I don't have any opinion on that. It's just that, for me, it seems somewhat less useful than, say, an isomorphic keyboard on a scale that has, like, 31 notes, for example. It's one of the scales I use, and it's inconvenient to do 31 notes on a traditional piano layout.